Hey, and welcome back to the Expert Edge. Today's going to be real good. Like, I went deep today in niching. Niching is one of the most talked about, angst over topics that I find in my clients and in my life in this journey. And I want to share with you the niche making model. I'm going to share with you 4 misbeliefs about niching and 3 strategies to niche better. And it's going to be super powerful. This is this is one of the first videos I've released on YouTube for a while. So I do share some visual models, which you will be able to understand on the podcast, but I think you'll have a better visual of it on YouTube. If you get a chance to watch it on YouTube, I'll put a link down below where you can go and watch the workshop on YouTube, or should I say the podcast on YouTube. So let's get into your niche, how to make good money, niching, what niching actually looks like on the Expert Edge. Let's get into it. Hey, it's Colin, and you are listening to the Expert Edge podcast. I was a professional speaker for over a decade, and now I focus on helping coaches, speakers, and course creators to speak and sell on virtual and live stages. The Expert Edge podcast is weekly content focused on helping you build your expert business. We cover marketing, storytelling, sales, communication skills, and so much more. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, and make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode. All right, so let's talk about niching, around nailing your niche, what it means to actually nail down your niche. Because I know for me, when I first started, nailing my niche or niching down was so difficult. In fact, I was extremely scared. I remember in my mind, I had so much fear because I thought, if I niche down, I'm going to be missing out on so many people. I'm going to be missing out on helping, all these people who won't come to me because I've narrowed down. But do you know what was crazy? When I started to niche down, and this is like back in the day, and I started to niche down more on like career advancement for middle managers, or leadership for technology-based companies. I started to niche down along my journey. Right? I've served many niches, but I remember the time that I niched down on teaching selling from stage, right? Selling from presenting for coaches, consultants, experts, like that space. And when I really niched down on that, my business just like tripled as soon as I niched down and got really clear on that. Now, obviously, I do a lot more than that. Like in our programs, we help people do a lot more than that. But there's something powerful about calling out a problem, a person, and a promise, and a way that you're doing it that truly makes a massive difference with your marketing and your messaging. And so I want to talk about building a niche. This is one of the topics that I cover in our elite coaching program. And I thought it'd be really useful to unpack this for you guys today. So let's talk about nailing your niche. So what is a niche? A niche essentially is a message that you're delivering to a specific person. So for example, you have a message to a specific person. So to not be niched is you do general help and coaching for everyone. Like that would be not niching. And so niching or niching, which they kind of call it in the US, niching a lot of the time, I'm going to call it niching because no one knows what niching is. No, whatever you want to call it, it's fine. But niching is essentially narrowing down. It's narrowing down on the message or narrowing down on the person. And like I said, there's two ways that you can niche. You can either niche on the person or you can niche on the message. So for example, you could niche on just a particular person. I think about, one of our clients in our programs, she niched on creative business owners. Like all she focuses on is creative business owners. But the message is quite broad. It's like general business building, but it's for creative business owners. And so because she narrowed on the person, she can be broader on the message. But you can narrow on the message and be broader on the person as well, or you can narrow on both, right? So that's kind of the philosophy around it. I want to share with you what I call the niche making model. And essentially there's 4 parts to the niche making model. The first part is the person. So in other words, who you help. If you can get narrow on the person who you help, that is a really key part of building this niche. So you've got the person, and if you're seeing the video up on YouTube, you'll see, and by the way, if you haven't, we've re-kickstarted our YouTube, so definitely come and check that out. But you can see the visual model. If you think about it, it's there's like two circles, and right in the middle, the middle circle is the person. So that's like who you actually help. Around the circle are three contexts. So first of all, around the circle is the person will have a problem. So it's really nice to know what is the problem that you solve for that person. So in other words, what are they struggling with? The second thing is you need to know the promise. In other words, what desire do they have? In other words, what's the outcome that they have, right? And then the third piece is the mechanism. In other words, the area that you help them in, or the way that you help them in, right? And so for me, the person is entrepreneurs. It's probably more, coaches, experts, people in this service-based industry, coaching industry. That's the person. The problem is that they don't know how to speak in a way that gets clients. So they get low conversions. Maybe they've ran a webinar before. They didn't get really many clients or any clients, or they want to get into speaking more, but they're afraid of it. Like that's like the problem. The promise is for you to become the speaker that drives your business forward so that you can get clients every time you speak, right? We have clients all the time running weekly, monthly, every other month, workshops online and offline, and it drives their entire business. And then the mechanism is speaking itself. So for me, does that make sense? So that's my niche. That's the niche maker model for me. Now there's 4 misbeliefs that people have when it comes to niching. Number 1 is that if you narrow the niche, you'll miss out on potential clients. It's just not true. In fact, what happens is if you don't narrow your niche enough, you are missing out on everyone, on all the clients. Because if someone can't automatically say, this person can help me, and that's the problem I have, then they're not going to want to move forward with you. So sometimes we think if I'm more general, then more people will join, but that's not actually true, right? Number 2, the second misbelief is I can solve so many problems, so I don't want to limit myself. I'm the same. I totally get this. Like in our programs, we help people with the messaging, with the niching, right? This is part of it, right? We help people build marketing campaigns. We help them film their Facebook ads. We help them to email clients to show up, to follow up, to look at their sales page. Like we do all of those things in our robust programs. But the core message, the core thing that I work with people on is that they want to speak. Like they want to speak live on a webinar, on a workshop, on in-person. They want to run their own events. It's like speaking is the mechanism. Does that make sense? And so when you lead with one particular thing, there's going to be an attraction to you on that particular message. So just because you can solve lots of problems, it doesn't mean that you need to lead with all the problems. You lead with one problem and then you help them solve more after it. The third misbelief is that narrowing my niche might restrict how much money I can make. I will tell you, unless there's, less than 10 people on the planet that you can serve in that particular niche, for most people, there is tens of thousands of people around the world, and especially if you're selling online things. But for most people, there's, a couple of million people that you could serve minimum in that particular niche. And so that is usually not the case. I would say not, and when I say usually, I mean like 99.9% of the time, that is not the case, is that narrowing your niche will restrict how much money you make. Narrowing your niche will elevate how much money you make. As a generalization. Number 4 is I don't want to choose the wrong niche. And this is the big one, is we feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to choose the wrong niche, so we don't choose anything. And so I always tell my clients, don't think about marrying the niche, date the niche, right? Don't think about marrying the niche forever, just date the niche. And so which one for you, I'd love to know if you're watching this on on YouTube, I'd love to know which one messes you up the most. Which messes you up the most out of those 4 ideas, those 4 pieces of problems? Number 1 is if I narrow my niche, I'll miss out on potential clients. Number 2 is I can solve so many problems, I don't want to limit myself. Number 3 is narrowing my niche might restrict how much money I make. And number 4 is I don't want to choose the wrong niche. Out of those 4, which one hangs you up, like kind of gets you to this point? a bit of a hang up so you don't move forward? I'd love to know. Put in the comments down below. I'd love to know which one that is for you, or what your thoughts, what your challenges are around niching. So I'm going to cover 3 ideas. We're going to go 3 concepts today in terms of what this looks like to actually niche. These are 3 concepts that I've helped, I think have made a big difference in my life and in my clients' lives. The first concept is you need to leverage, when you niche, you need to leverage your uniqueness. So in other words, it's your DNA. What's the experience, the background, the experience that you've had in what you do? I think that can make a huge difference. And I love Einstein's quote, which he said, if you want to know the future, look to the past. And what I mean by that is, to look to your past means that you can find uniqueness in your past, and that can speak to your future. I'm not saying that your past equals your future. I'm saying that if you look to your past and you look at some of the experiences, the unique experiences that you've had, that can actually help you to identify the person or the message you want to head towards, right? And so if we think about it like this, there's a few people I wanted to highlight. Just 2 at the moment, which is number 1, Dave Ramsey, right? So Dave Ramsey runs, arguably the biggest expert business specifically around coaching people to get out of debt. Now, his background is he went bankrupt in real estate and then he rebuilt his financial life. And so he talks about basically getting out of debt, right? He went through bankruptcy. He uses his story to message the experience that he had. So the business is creating financial coaching in his business, right? Ramsey Solution, teaching people how to get out of debt and manage their money. So you can see how he let his past experience, his challenges, his difficulties inform his future niche. One of my good friends, her name's Kathy Heller. She's amazing. She has actually been on the Expert Edge podcast and been on hers, which is nice. But Kathy's background is she was a musician. And she pivoted to licensing music after struggling to break through into the industry. And she saw amazing success. And she talks about all these synchronicities and God moments of just where like God just showed up for her. And it was when she energetically showed up for her life and her calling that synchronicities and powerful moments happened. And she talks a lot about helping creatives and entrepreneurs build that sense of purpose in their business and harness their authenticity or their authentic talents. She's like magical at drawing out the energetic blocks that are in people's lives and helping them to step into their power, to regain control of their life, to start creating and stop managing. And so, but she uses her background and her experience and working in the creative space, musical space, that sort of stuff. And she doesn't just work with musicians, but she's used that creative bent to really message her and her spiritual background, which is just so cool. So I just wanted to give you 2 examples of people who have used their past to inform their future, if that makes sense. And so when you think about your past, some questions you could ask is, what industries have you worked in? Have you had experience in certain industries? Just recently, we had a lady join our elite program, and she worked in the healthcare industry, and she worked in marketing in the healthcare industry, right, as an employee. But when she branched out, she started teaching Facebook ads, but specifically to healthcare providers. People in like the health practitioner space. And that has served her really well, right? So she's niched on both things. If you think about it like that, she's niched on the message, which is marketing and Facebook ads. And she's niched on the person, which is practitioners, right? Health practitioners. What type of people have you worked with before? Like, have you worked with certain types of people before? And that can help you to inform the type of niche that you have. What skills have you developed over the years, right? There's certain skills you've developed what achievements have you accomplished? Have you had any achievements or awards in certain areas? All of these things can start to experience or to inform the niche that you're wanting to move towards and your personal story, right? Many of you have done the conversion story formula, which is conversionstoryformula.com. Many people have done that, and that helps you to understand what your message is and bring it into a story format to communicate it. And so these are just some questions to think about your past so that you can inform your future with your niche. The second big idea is with your niching, you need to upgrade the avatar. In other words, a lot of the time, and I do this coaching a lot with my clients, is around A lot of the time we focus on a low level avatar. What I mean is we focus on people who have no money, no resource, and no resourcefulness to actually do it because we feel comfortable that we can help them. But the problem is if they're in a state of unresourcefulness, then they're going to struggle to make a decision to come and join a program of yours, a coaching experience, a course, whatever it is. And so my encouragement for you is to do this, is to think about upgrading your avatar. Now, there's three things. There's a model that I teach, which is called the elevated avatar. And these are three frames you want to think about to upgrade your avatar. Number one is they need to value personal development. So they don't need to be in the personal development industry, but they need to have a mindset of personal growth. If they're in a fixed mindset, it's going to be tough to have them join your programs. They have to be in a mindset of personal growth. And that can be part of the niche that you choose and even the messaging, which is a bigger conversation, messaging. But part of the niching is just valuing personal development, right? That's the first thing you need to think about with your avatar. So they've got to be growth minded. Number two is they have to be convenience focused. So in other words, I find that it's easier to sell to people if they value time more than money. Now, I know that money's always going to be important. Like, I totally get it. But if you have someone who values their time, if they value their money way more than their time, then it's sometimes harder to sell to that person, right? And so I always find with my clients, if they can find an avatar who money is not necessarily the main thing, it's always going to be a part of it, right? But it's like they're focused on growth. Money is like looked after, but it's actually time that's their biggest issue. I find that is usually going to be a more lucrative type of avatar. So in other words, time over money. And the third piece is they have some access to resources. So in other words, they have access to credit, a loan, cash, all that sort of stuff, right? And so in other words, they're willing to invest. And so this is what I'm thinking about with upgrading your avatar. And so this could be going from, just regular working mums to professional mums, right? And it's not that you can't serve regular working mums. It's like, but if you message the niche on professional mums, you're going to attract people who have more of a time problem than a money problem. Does that make sense? And so even just that little tweak can make a massive difference. And so when I think about it, there's like certain language that you want to be using to upgrade your avatar. And so some of the language you can use is they're conscious minded, like they're a very conscious minded individual. They're professional, they're growth orientated, they're business minded, they're convenience minded, they're high achieving, they're driven, they're abundance minded, they're high performing. These are all like words that I think about when we're up leveling the language in the niche of the person that you're focusing on. And the third big idea is you need to squeeze it tight. What I mean by squeezing it tight is you need to squeeze the niche narrower. And so there's this model that I teach, which is called the niche narrower. And if you think about it, there's kind of like, there's three layers to it. It's like a funnel. There's three layers to it, and there's two pipes going through the funnel, right? And if you see the YouTube video, you'll check it out. By the way, the link of the YouTube video will be down below in the comments if you're listening on the podcast. And so if you think about it, there's like two funnels, right? There's the person and the message. And at the top, there's broad, medium, and narrow. And so what you want to think about is you have to squeeze it tighter. Now, you don't necessarily have to go to narrow, but I think you should go at least to medium, or narrow, broad, and I'll explain what that means. So, for example, let's say a broad person is busy mums, and a broad message is growing their career, right? Broad, busy mums growing their career. You could narrow down a little bit further and say not just busy mums, executive mums. So they're a C-suite mum, they're an executive, and they've got kids. So you could specifically say, I specifically work with executive mums with kids. I'll say this, one of my clients, he was a professional trainer, a personal trainer, right, in the healthcare space, health fitness. And he niched into working with female doctors only, right? And he built an online program specifically for female doctors only. And his business exploded as soon as he went specifically for female doctors who wanting to improve their health. And so that's an example of narrowing the person. And his niche was kind of medium, right? It was just health coaching. And so this example here, you could say executive mums with kids, and you could do developing their leadership, or getting a promotion, developing their career, and or getting their next promotion, right? Executive mums with kids. And you can even narrow further. You don't have to, but it could be executive mums with kids working in the finance space. So they work in finance, they're an executive, they got kids, they're executive mum, and you help them with upgrading their career, right? You could stay broader, but if you narrow down to that, like that is going to sing. That niche is going to sing to the right avatar, right? You could go narrow. You could say boardroom communication for finance executives with kids, right? That's narrow. But I don't think you have to go narrow with both the message and the person, but that's just some thoughts with this whole niche thing. Another example, female business owners to grow their business, broad, right? We could narrow down. We could say women creative agency owners with social media marketing, right? So we could say, we help you build your social media marketing for creative business owners. Or you could say creative business owners making over $100,000, right? You could have that as a criteria for the person, and getting clients using Instagram. So building an Instagram funnel. That's narrow. Like I said, you don't have to go narrow, but imagine if I said getting clients using Instagram for female business owners. That's a broad person, narrow message, and that's going to work, right? Can you see how that works? Or I could say women creative agency owners earning over $100,000, and we help you grow your business. That'll work, right? It's a narrow person with a broad message. And so what I'm saying here is you need to go narrow on something. This is, by the way, this masterclass it's like just a snippet of one of the masterclasses that I run inside of our Sell From Stage Elite programs. And I wanted to share with you some concepts, right? Some concepts of how this all works. So let's bring this together with the niche narrowing model. So it's the person who you help. It is the problem that they solve. It is the promise that they desire. And it is the mechanism that you use to help them in. So for me, I'll give you an example. For me, I work with coaches and experts. The problem is low conversion rates with their presentation, right? They want to speak, they want to convert, they want to build a presentation and deliver it in a way that gets clients every time they speak, in person, virtual, doesn't matter. And so the promise is get clients every time you speak. And the mechanism is virtual and in-person presentation and speaking, right? And so that is the niche. And then obviously there's a back end that helps them to build that out, market it, all that sort of stuff. So that's an example of the model. Now, I'd love to know what's been most valuable from our conversation today around niching. We've shared 4 mistakes and 3 big concepts around niching and the niche making model. I'd love to know what's been most valuable. Could you put a comment down below if you're watching the YouTube right now? Put a comment down below. I'd love to know what's been most helpful, most valuable. I'd love to hear your feedback, number 1. And then number 2, if you are a coach, a course creator, an expert, and you're wanting to build a high converting presentation, start really speaking in a way that converts, then head over to my Instagram, and it's just @ColinBoyd, and send me a DM with the word elite. I'd love to have a personal conversation with you. It won't be my team. It'll literally be me. I'd love to have a chat with you where you're at, and share with you some different ways that we can work with you and help you if you're interested in having that conversation about being a speaker, stepping on stage, owning the stage, and actually getting clients from it. So I trust this has been helpful, and appreciate you. We'll speak to you really soon on the Expert Edge next week. Bye for now.